Hey guys, this is a video about a really commonly tested concept on the DAT known as an alternation of generations. An alternation of generations, the term basically is talking about a certain life cycle for some plants. Some animals undergo this life cycle as well, namely jellyfish, but you probably won't be asked that. On the DAT, you're more commonly going to be asked about alternation of generations concerning plants. Specifically, as I mentioned in the fourth taxonomy video, or the fifth taxonomy video about plants, ferns, and also fungi. So, ferns and fungi generally undergo an alternation of generations. Some terms to know: gametes in plants are the same as in animals, so they come together through fertilization to form a zygote. Spores are really similar to gametes. You can kind of imagine them the same in your head, except for spores can develop into whole organisms without fertilization, so they don't have to become fertilized to develop properly. So basically the way that I studied for the alternation of generations questions on the DAT was memorizing this picture. This picture will get you almost every question right on the DAT, if not all of them, that concern alternations of generations. So watch this video, understand this picture, study this picture, memorize it, and then try and draw it on your own a couple times to make sure you've really got it down. So up here you can see, just to explain the diagram to you a little bit, because once it makes sense it'll all click and you'll understand this concept really well. So up here you can see that we're in the, we have an N ploidy level and a 2N ploidy level. So as a frame of reference, just to kind of aid your understanding, humans, we have 23 chromosomes, and then our somatic cells have a ploidy level of 2N, meaning they have 2 copies of each chromosome. So we have 46 chromosomes in our somatic cells, whereas our sex cells just have 23 chromosomes. So our 2N cells undergo meiosis to create N cells. Our 46 chromosome cells undergo meiosis to create cells that only have 23 chromosomes, our sex cells. And that same thing's happening in an alternation of generations. So let's think of a fern, for example. A fern that's in the sporophyte phase of its life cycle, will have these 2N cells undergo meiosis to form spores that are an N ploidy level. So if a fern had 30 chromosomes in its sporophyte phase, through meiosis it would create spores that had 15 chromosomes each. That should make sense. That's pretty straightforward. Then through mitosis, so just reproducing themselves over and over, these cells, these spores, can form a new organism. It's still a fern, but it's in a different stage of its life cycle, known as the gametophyte. So these spores just keep dividing themselves over and over, and they end up, as you can see like this, if it divided itself over and over, you'd end up with something like this. And this gametophyte will produce gametes. Again, this is just through mitosis, because if these cells have 15 chromosomes, again, 15 is just a made-up number, don't memorize that. If these cells have N chromosomes, or 15 chromosomes, and then they don't need to undergo meiosis to create sex cells that would fuse to form a 30 chromosome individual. They just have to keep undergoing mitosis. So through mitosis it creates gametes that can fuse with gametes from another gametophyte. These gametes come together, they fertilize. This says fusion, I prefer the term fertilization, to form a zygote. So this zygote would have 30 chromosomes because it was just formed from 2 15 chromosome gametes. And now we're back into the 2N stage of the life cycle. Then through mitosis again, so this cell will reproduce itself just as a human develops through mitosis. We will develop a new fern. And again, this fern will, through meiosis, create spores, and on and on. That's how an alternation of generations works. So just remember, the gametophyte, this is the only thing that people usually get mixed up on. The gametophyte produces gametes, while the sporophyte produces spores. So, like I said, it's just going to take studying this picture and memorizing it. You're going to get questions on the DAT that say, which stage of a fern's life cycle produces gametes, and you want to know it's the gametophyte. Or if they said which stage in a fern's life cycle has a ploidy number of 2, or cells contain 2 N chromosomes, you'd want to know that's the sporophyte. So those are the things people get mixed up most frequently. Last thing we need to talk about, ferns are what we call homosporous plants. They're homosporous, meaning that the spores they produce are neither male nor female. So we can just look at this picture, for example. This fern's producing these spores that are neither male nor female, which through mitosis become gametes. So if these gametes were neither male nor female, you just need two gametes to come together to form a zygote. That's known as a homosporous plant, and that's what ferns are, so you should know that. The other options are that plants can produce spores that are either male or female. If that is the case, obviously it's not a homosporous plant, then the male spores, or the male gametes of the plant, are known as microspores, while the female spores are known as megaspores. So write that down. So the male form of the spore is known as a microspore, while the female is known as a megaspore. Now, like I said, homosporous is a type of plant that produces genderless or bisexual spores and gametes. If a plant produces male and female spores, these are the names of the spores. So ferns are homosporous. Almost everything else will produce micro and megaspores. You can remember that males are microspores and females are megaspores by thinking about human reproduction. The male gamete is micro compared to the female gamete, the egg. The egg is so much larger than the sperm. So male is micro because the male gametes in humans are tiny compared to the female gametes. Hope that helped you understand the alternation of generations better.